And welcome to our March 30th, 2022 Board of Douglas County Commissioners business meeting. We want to welcome any of you who are with us at the old courthouse in person and those joining virtually on Zoom. I'm just going to share a bit of information about how we conduct our meetings and public comment. Each action item on the agenda will offer an opportunity for public comment specific to that topic. We ask that you wait until the agenda item that you're here for has come up for discussion and we open it up for public comment. At the start of our meeting or near the start of our meeting, before discussing our regular business items, we will also invite folks to offer general public comment, which is for items not on today's agenda, but related to general county business. All public comments should be directed to the county commission. We will hear from folks who are with us in person first, then online commenters. If you're joining us on Zoom, please plan to use the raise your hand function when the time comes for your comments. Staff will call on you, unmute you, and you'll be able to comment at that time. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We ask speakers give their full name and Douglas County residence for our meeting minutes. And the county does reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker who is vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen. Please know that online participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet. Materials are published in our agenda for your reference as well, and presenters will be made panelists and unmuted by staff as each agenda item comes up. We also ask that presenters introduce themselves each time you speak for the record. A recording of this meeting will be available on our website and YouTube page after we adjourn. We'll start this evening with our consent agenda, which we do. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a proclamation tonight, which is our number one. My apologies. Let me pull that up. We are going to do a proclamation for Read Across Lawrence event. And then if we have any guests here from the library, which I think we do, you're welcome to come on up. Do we have a microphone up there, Sarah? It disappeared. We'll get you a microphone in a moment. I will read the proclamation and then we'll invite you guys to make any sort of presentation or add any comments that you'd like. Okay. Proclamation for Read Across Lawrence event 2022. Whereas Read Across Lawrence is an annual community-wide reading event that encourages everyone in Lawrence to read and discuss the same book. Now in its 17th year, it will commence on April 1 and close on April 21. And whereas in 2022, Read Across Lawrence features Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu, a story about Willis Wu who dreams of playing Kung Fu guy, yet he does not see himself as the protagonist in his own life. Interior Chinatown explores the themes of pop culture, assimilation, and immigration. And whereas together with the Lawrence Public Library Friends Foundation and the University of Kansas Libraries, Lawrence Public Library will host book discussions and events for patrons to explore the themes in the book. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Douglas County, Kansas recognizes the Lawrence Public Library's 2022 Read Across Lawrence program and urges all citizens to read the book, attend events, and be inspired by the themes of race, assimilation, immigration, and that the book espouses, adopted this 30th day of March 2022. Would you all like to say anything?
Yes, hello. I'm Leah Newton. I work in reader services at Lawrence Public Library. Myself, my boss, Polly, who's the reader services coordinator, Kristen here, Kathleen, and many others have been working really hard on Read Across Lawrence this year. As that proclamation kind of pointed out, and as some of you may already be familiar with, Read Across Lawrence is kind of a flagship program that we do every year, where we pick one book and we encourage the community to read it together at the same time. And then we curate a whole slate of events around the themes in the book. And this year we picked Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. Now, this is a really unique and brilliant work of satirical fiction. It's actually written in screenplay format. And in it, we follow Willis Wu, who is a young Chinese American man, and he's kind of struggling to make his way in the world, particularly in Hollywood as an actor. And so we go on this journey with him as he struggles with things like his aging parents and poverty and racism in his industry and in his country in general. So we picked this book for a couple of different reasons. It's very accessible, it's diverse, And Charles Yu, the author, has this amazing ability to bring levity to some really important issues. So the hope is the community reads it together and it spurs some really thoughtful discussions, but that it's also like a really one-of-a-kind and enjoyable reading experience. So thanks to KU Libraries and the LPL Friends and Foundation, we've already gotten this book in the hands of many eager people wanting to read it. And we do have a full slate of programming coming up in April. The first one is actually going to be Friday. That's a screening of 1977's Iron Monkey, a classic Kung Fu film. That'll be at 6 o'clock in the auditorium. Another big one that we're doing is we're going to have David May. He is an assistant professor of film and media studies at KU, and he's going to be doing a presentation called Generic Asian American, Hollywood's Invisible Role. And this ties really nicely in with the themes of the book, the main one, which is representation in film. And another really fun one that I'm super excited about is going to be Stage Combat with Ronin Stunt Company. That ties in with the major theme of the book, which is Kung Fu and martial arts in film. And I'm really excited about that one because it feels like it's been a while since we were able to have like a really fun big event on the library lawn. And that's where this one's going to be on Saturday, April 16th at 2:30 in the afternoon. And then, of course, we do have the author Charles Yu coming to do a virtual talk on April 21st at 7 p.m. So Kristen just passed out some books. There should be a bookmark in there that has all of the events because there are several that I didn't mention just now. And yeah, thanks again to KU Libraries and the LPL Friends and Foundation for continuing to support this and make it a success year after year. And I hope you all enjoy the book and that you come to some of these events. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have a copy of the proclamation for you all to hand to you. Thanks for joining us and thank you for the free books. That was very lovely of you.
This is Commissioner Portillo. I just want to say I love this program and I'm really excited for this book. So thank you all for putting so much thought into the programming and the selection. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we will move on to our consent agenda. We did have a request from staff to pull item 2.1 to defer to another meeting. Is there anything else that commissioners would like to pull from our consent? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the public if there's anyone here that would like to pull something from the consent agenda for further discussion. Anybody online, Jill? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission and ready for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to general public comment, and I see that a few folks have signed up for that. The first person we have is John Frankie. You are Mr. Frankie. You can come up to the microphone. It's already turned on for you, and make sure you speak closely to it.
Thank you. My name is John Frankie. I live at 2222 North 600 Road, Eudora. Just 6 miles south of Eudora in Glow Farm. My wife and I, we've got 105 acres there. And although it's not on the agenda today, but I just came to really quickly talk about the West Solar project and my concerns towards that. Probably my number one concern is when I've been reading through the Douglas Plan 2040, about every section I read, it just seems to counter what I'm seeing, at least seeing from the Planning Commission meetings I've attended in Douglas County and Johnson County. I started pulling them off. I was going to print the whole book off, but I didn't want to spend that much on ink. And I won't go through reading them, but you might want to revisit that 2040 plan because I feel there's a lot of things in it that greatly conflict with the size and scope of the project that's being considered. I'm the first one, and I wasn't really prepared to come and talk too much, and I do get winded, so I wrote a few notes down, but I want to thank you, commissioners, for your service to the county. When my wife and I moved here, it was a long dream, and we looked hard at the area counties around Kansas City, and we picked Douglas County, and mainly for the reasons that were focused in Plan 2040, the focus on ag, the focus on the environment. the long-range strategic planning. I was born and raised in Johnson County, and they used to have that plan years ago. But I just want you guys moving forward on this, and I know you're not anywhere close to making decisions, but think very long and hard about not only the environmental impact, the wildlife, the energy needs, the watershed that goes through our property, but don't forget about the human element. And that's what's really concerning me now as a resident of the Clearfield area, is what I'm seeing a lot of close-knit groups of people, really good people, every one of them. Some are pro, going all out, leasing their space out. Some are totally against solar. And then there's some that are looking more for common sense, reasonable solar. That's kind of the ballpark I'm in. I understand it's a viable and it's a good alternative. It has its limitations. I don't think it would have generated too much energy today. I just want to quickly end. I got 30 seconds with an American's prayer. Provide us the leaders, O Lord, who are proud of adversity, gentle and compassionate in victory, strong enough to realize their weakness, and when afraid, be brave enough to admit it. Allow us the ability to seek, select, and follow such leadership. And by their example, furnish us backbone, humor, integrity, and initiative. Provide us such, O Lord, and our nation and our community will continue to master ourselves and not others. We'll remember the simplicity of truth and greatness that makes us one community under your will. That was written by County Commissioner, Johnson County, 2nd District, 1980, in a speech that happened to be my father. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frankie. Justin?
Wow, that library book sounds boring. And what was that other one they said? Iron Monkey? That sounds pretty racist. You guys support that? And what if she said Kung Fu? That's really racist. Why do you guys support that racist stuff? I thought you guys were ultra woke. You okay with that? You're gonna give them a certificate? My name is Dr. Justin Spees. See that disapproving look from my father figure back there, the sheriff that likes to wag his finger at me. I have a PhD in human development from Kansas State University. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy as well. I started protesting these mask mandates that they put into place. I was very, very concerned about what it was going to do to children. It was very obvious. This is my weekly reminder to you guys that I haven't forgotten what you did. And I'm not going to forget what you did. There will be a reckoning. People wonder why I was so passionate about these mask mandates. Why the mask? Some people got passionate about the vaccine. I was always masked. There's a couple of reasons, but one of them is very, very simple, is that once they put this in place, now they can put it in place whenever they want to. And now the drum is already being beaten. The BA2 subvariant or whatever it's called, COVID is already, the drum beat is already being heard. It's getting louder and louder in the media. And before you know it, they can do whatever they want with these mandates, and they will, and they will. Patrick Kelly, he doesn't even have a spine to vote on his own. He just went ahead and voted with these two because he wanted to show that there was solidarity. You guys are unanimous. Either way, you're wrong, man. Where's your conviction? Do you want the mandate or did you not want it? Why did you just blame them? I just voted with them, so we show that we're all together. Where's your conviction? Do you have any? I would love to debate you on anything at any time. Yep, make a little note. I would love to do that. And we can talk about why it is you are abusing children. Why it is that you just hide back there, don't answer any of my emails. Not just you. It's not just you. It's all of them. It's the school board. It's that guy. It's Ambrister. It's all you guys. It's the library. All of you guys. Cowards. Yeah, make a note, man. Make a note. I'll see you next week.
The next person, I'm having a hard time making out the first name, so I apologize, but oh, Doc Noki. Thank you.
My name's Robert Kanoki, and we was here and heard the agrivoltaics deal. The only part I think that will help us in our project, the solar project, is the sheep. I'm in favor of you having the people control the vegetation with the sheep, not with chemical, but with the sheep. Most of that land is very poor land. It's not prime land, and it will grow grass, but it will not grow some of these other crops. It hasn't been doing too good on that anyway. The other thing I want to talk about, I don't know if we've had any solar people talk here today or not. I couldn't understand them too well. But anyway, the Kansas City Star had this solar power, the best neighbor ever. They had a half page, and today they had another quarter page of it. And I think they'll have more before the end of the week, mainly headed to Johnson County. But they got 8 reasons why this is not going to, why you don't need all the signs down the road. Number 1, no new traffic to clog already busy roads. Number 2, no noise to keep you awake or disturb your family. Number 3, no trash or emissions blowing into your backyard. Number 4, no crush of new students overwhelming local schools. Number 5, no strangers living behind you, watching you from across the fence. Number 6, no strange smells, loud noises, or restless behavior to disturb your neighborhood. Number 7, no surprise strip malls or other disruptive developments right behind you. No expected new or expanding freeways to handle rush hour traffic. Just clean, cheap Johnson County made energy. And this is put out by the Kansas Power Alliance. These are the people that NextEra is going to sell their electricity to. So they want that electricity. They want it because solar is the cheapest way to produce electricity. It's cheaper than the windmills. It's a lot cheaper than the coal or the gases, and it doesn't cause any environmental problems. Thank you.
Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane Kanoki, and I live at 23535 West 74th Street in Shawnee, Kansas. Along with my family, I'm a property owner of land in Douglas County. And we have signed a lease for our land with NextEra Energy. I wanted to talk about the fact that providing solar energy is a private business providing a key infrastructure need. And I'm pleased that you have 25 years on your conditional use permit for the length of time. I would ask that you might consider that that timeline commence at the start of production, not necessarily the start of the permit, but at the start of the solar production. Also, I want to emphasize again that this is utility scale solar, not industrial, utility scale solar. And my father talked about a lot of the community values that the Power Alliance is publishing about how it keeps the community stable without the noise or expanded traffic or big changes there. I have to tell you that I talked to my real estate agent a couple weeks ago, and he thought, well, we'd just run out from where I live and go see the land. And he didn't realize we would be going to the edge of Johnson County and the other edge of Douglas County. And I showed him a picture of the land. And you know what the first thing he said to me was, has your family ever talked to a developer about this land? You know, we really don't want to make this into another residential area or that. What we want is we want to keep this land for our family heritage and as a land bank and have it produce a benefit, not just for us, but for our community also. So I wanted to share, the reaction that you get when you talk to people that are developers or real estate agents. And we certainly talked maybe 20 years ago, right after 9/11, about what would we do with the land then. And we thought, well, maybe development would move out there. That was 20 years ago. And the development hasn't moved out there. And so we have a different approach now on the fact that it could be solar, it could be productive. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and join you in person and hear the agrivoltaics. And like my father, I think, we're excited about the possibilities for that because that does keep the land productive in just more ways than one. So thank you very much for your time. Look forward to it. Bye.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to provide general public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll double check if anyone's online. Okay, we'll move on to our regular business agenda. Item 4.1, a presentation from the City of Lawrence on the Community Economic Development Strategic Plan.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Britt Krumkano. I'm the Economic Development Director with the City of Lawrence. And were we able to get my presentation up? Okay, let's see here. You don't tell us to load it, we won't load it. Oh. So I have it on a jump. Can I grab it? I'm a very visual person, so I have to talk in pictures if I can. Well, I'm not exactly sure how to get this started. Thank you, Jill. Start from the beginning. Excellent. Okay, there you go. Hopefully that works. Thank you, Jill, for my technology help. And thank you so much for having me here tonight. I am pleased to come and talk to you about the Community Economic Development Strategic Plan. I would like to give you a little bit of background, and then I've invited several participants who've been involved in this process for at least a year and a half. And I'd like them to come up and kind of briefly speak and tell you a little bit about their involvement with the strategic plan as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, go back a little bit. In 2020, the pandemic had hit, and we were directed by the city commission, or excuse me, the city manager to do an RFP for some consultants to help us do an economic development strategic plan, or at least come up with some recommendations. So on a whirlwind schedule, we did an RFP, and then we hired Ernst & Young to come in and provide some consulting services. And when they did that, they did a huge array of different community engagement. We had 11 different focus groups. We had both a printed and a digital survey. We had 17 community input sessions. We had various interviews with both commissioners, elected officials from the city and the county, as well as other people. And so they ended up getting a lot of data and composing it for us. And at the end of 2020, they were able to produce recommendations in terms of strategies to pursue. So before I start, I'm going to give you a definition that I like for economic development. It is a process by which the economic well-being and quality of life of a community are improved according to targeted goals and strategies. And the reason I feel this is important is because I believe you need a roadmap. And we've never had a roadmap for doing economic development. We'd never done this type of thing before. We were all kind of going off in different directions, all doing our own thing. And this gave us the opportunity to come up with a roadmap. So we hired Ernst & Young to come in and work with us. And what was happening at the same time is the city did its own strategic plan. These were two separate things that were being pursued. They were totally going in parallel paths, but not interacting with each other. So it had its own recommendations and its own outcome. So, like I said, at the end of 2020, what Ernst & Young delivered to us was their strategy recommendations. It really wasn't an economic development strategic plan. In fact, they said that in their document. They said, we really need to take this and make it your own. You need to create an implementation plan for this. But what this would be is just kind of a kickoff of recommended strategies for a 20-year period. So it's meant to be a long-term plan. It was meant to be very bold and aspirational. It reflects the values and the priorities of the community. And by the community, it wasn't necessarily just Lawrence. We don't define the community as just Lawrence. And again, it was the first community economic development strategic plan that we'd ever done. Most communities, I think, that are successful have already done this. It may also be done in partnership with the EDAs, and they call it a CEDS, or Community Economic Development Assessment. We are hoping to work with EDA to eventually be able to turn this into CEDS, and then that way we can be eligible for additional grant dollars as well. But we need to work with the EDA yet. We're not sure if that will happen, but this was the start of it, because otherwise we had nothing. Three main goals with this was to diversify the economy, enhance the community character and culture, and make intentional and innovative investments. So what they delivered was 21 recommended strategies. They also recommended that we form collaborative partnerships given our budget restraints. I think it's no surprise to anybody that no one organization can handle everything when it comes to economic development. It's so, it's all-encompassing, it's widespread. No one organization has the dollars or the human capacity. So it's going to be very important that we form what are called collaborative partnerships in order to be able to leverage each other's resources and work together to make our initiatives happen. And then they also directed the staff to create an implementation action plan to pursue those priorities. So just a little bit after that. They delivered that at the end of 2020, and I think they presented it to the City Commission on January of 2021. From there, we had an implementation team form to look at those recommendations and kind of go through and start to refine them. And many of the people who are here to speak tonight were very much involved in that whole process. So they can also speak to that as well. So our approach is really different. Economic development is typically and traditionally done in a top-down fashion, where you have certain organizations that kind of call the shots and decide exactly what's going to happen. This is what is called strategic doing, and it's a new approach to economic development, and it's catching on with more and more with different communities. And what it is a series of interconnected networks that pursue these initiatives and work on these initiatives to make them happen. We've had many of these groups already, but we've kind of all been going in different directions. And sometimes we have multiple groups that are doing the same thing. So this is an attempt to kind of get us all together and say, hey, you want to move that initiative, so do I. Here's what we're working on. What can you guys help with? And that sort of thing. So strategic doing is, I think it's the way that we are going to have to do economic development from here on out because of, again, all the constraints in terms of time and resources. We just can't afford to duplicate effort and be inefficient about it. We need to call upon our community partners and our community groups to work with us to move the needle on these initiatives. So the city strategic plan was also adopted at the end of 2020. It's a 5-year roadmap. It has 5 outcome areas and 6 commitment areas. So it's framed in a different manner, if you will. And I had spent quite a bit of last year trying to figure out how the two aligned. And so what I had come up with after a while is where they actually did align, that was going to be the city's economic development priorities over the next 5 years, since theirs is a 5-year plan. At the same time, we don't want to forget the other strategies that are mentioned in the recommended strategies in the economic development strategic plan. I think we need to be pursuing working groups on those as well, even though they may not be what the city is going to prioritize. Some of these initiatives are long-lived. They take a lot of work before you actually see something happen on them. And so if I can get a group together that feels strongly about a particular strategy, I'm still going to be doing that. So where the two intersect, just so you kind of know where the city is coming from, is what I'm calling the short-term priorities. We want to streamline the development code and permitting processes. We've for too long heard about how unfriendly Lawrence is to business. So we're in the process now of completely redoing the development code. We've had a series of 6 workshops on Lean Six Sigma on going through the permitting process for residential. And I believe we'll be doing that also for commercial. So there's a lot of work in that, but we feel strongly that that is important. The next one is to target commercial and industrial growth and entrepreneurship. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Develop a strategic marketing plan to attract capital investment for commercial real estate assets. And again, that's kind of what I'm going to talk about next. And focus resources that grow the commercial industrial tax base and provide additional economic benefits. So why is this important? You probably know even better than I what our tax revenue base is made up of. We are heavily dependent on residential, and we also have a heavy exempt tax base as well. That leaves our commercial industrial at only 12%, and that's the most efficient tax revenue generation property class there is because it's assessed at 25% or over double what residential is. And I do also want to clarify a distinction between permanently exempt and temporary exempt. Permanently exempt runs with the land as long as the owner stays the same and then the usage stays the same. Whereas temporary exempt lasts for a set period of time. If you want to think about incentives, that is where the temporary exempt property would be coming in. And you can see that that's a very small fraction of our real estate base. In addition to that, I just wanted to highlight the way that we do economic development incentives and the due diligence and analysis that it has to go through in order to get passed, I think is really, really important because it ends up giving us what I would call a long-term asset. This particular one, for example, is the grandstand property tax abatement that has expired at the end of 2021. And as you can see, even through the 10 years of the abatement period, they still paid property tax. So the community still got a buy-in into that, as well as they created 198 jobs at an average wage of over $54,000. So they brought a large benefit to our community. And this year they'll be fully on the tax rolls. So I think with this type of program, again, we get a short-term payoff, but we also get a really nice long-term investment. So here's the next steps. This is actually where the hard work is at, because after the consultants gave us the recommendations, they said, okay, now you guys go to work. And this has been a long process. It will take some time, but we are working to develop these working groups and to come up with a strategic implementation action plan. My hope is that we do this once a year so we can actually report to the governing bodies as well as other entities on what our groups are doing to move the needle on their initiative. And again, this will be my focus as much as possible for the rest of this year. And I also just want to leave us with, I always like to say we need to look at the end goal. And our common objective is to have a stronger, more resilient and inclusive economy. That's what we're all working for. We may go at it different ways. We maybe have different approaches to that, but I think we all need to remember we're in this together. It helps all of us. And again, if we can work collaboratively, I think that makes sense. It helps us to harness expert knowledge and also leverage resources with each other. So that's, I believe, the end of my presentation. But I would like to go ahead and have the others speak a little bit because they've been walking this path with me. And some are, sometimes you walk down it a little bit further and a little bit faster, and other times it's slower. You do have to, basically what I say is put one step in front of the other. Sometimes you can't see the path in front of you. But if you put one step in front of the other and you keep doing that, eventually you're going to see where you're going and how to get there. So with that, I'll be happy to answer questions, but
could we do questions with you first?
Sure,
And then
sure.
we'll have some other guests.
Yep.
So thank you for that presentation, Commissioner Portillo.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Brett, I really appreciate this presentation and I appreciate kind of the overview and the conversation. I had a few questions that are specific to your presentation. So particularly around the discussion of exempt residential and commercial properties, it looks like those are Lawrence specific numbers, not the county as a whole.
Those particular ones are, and those came from, thank you, Steve Miles, if he's here. He provided that. It is Lawrence specific. Those numbers are Lawrence specific.
Thank you. And how do those numbers help us compare to other communities? So when we're looking at permanently exempt, you mentioned that we have quite a bit, but I know there are other counties that have much higher numbers than 15%. How does, I guess we'd only know here Lawrence specifically, but do you know how Douglas County in particular compares to other similar counties within our state, across the country, for that mix of exempt residential and commercial?
No, the only thing we have is what the consultants had provided us. And, just because we're a university town, and university towns tend to be a little heavier on the exempt than others, they compared us against, I believe, 40 some peer communities. Some were universities, some were not. So as can be expected, like I said, the ones that aren't university, they're not going to have near as a higher percentage of their pie that is that. We do have in our economic development annual report, we do look at some of our neighboring communities. We don't split it out quite as finely as this, but we do commercial versus residential. And in some of those neighboring communities, they're much higher on the commercial percentage than they are on the residential. And I think you would expect that in some of the communities like, I think Latham might be one of those, and Shawnee and that sort of thing as well. But without the report in front of me, I couldn't tell you exactly what that split is. I think we're probably on par with Manhattan, or maybe a little bit higher on residential, or maybe not as high on residential. But again, without consulting that report, I don't know for sure what those numbers are.
Okay, and I'm wrapping my head around this idea of kind of a community-wide plan. It feels a lot like when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion work, where it's everybody's work, but then sometimes when we say it's everybody's work, it ends up being nobody's work. So we really try to look for lines of accountability and who's accountable for each of these things. So we see that there's kind of the economic strategic plan, the city strategic plan. Where does accountability lie for the community economic development plan?
I think the accountability, or at least the administration of it, will probably land in my office. In terms of the accountability, I think if you're looking at every year, if we have the economic development action plan and you're seeing what these different groups are doing, then you can see what they have done. In terms of accountability, I think that gets into dollars. If you're going to fund these sorts of things, then I think there's an additional level of accountability that would come into play. But the city is not planning on making other entities support any of these initiatives. Most of these initiatives right now, I would say the vast majority of them are volunteer driven at this point. And so Jill happens to work on one of our working groups, which has to do with equity and inclusion. But what we have tried to do is align the strategies with what her group has already defined. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to duplicate at all. And we certainly don't want to dictate to these working groups what they need to do. We feel that they're the experts. They're the ones who worked in this arena. They're the ones who are passionate and advocates for this. Which I think all working groups are going to have. In order to really go forward, you really need to have somebody who's passionate and will plod along no matter what. Like I said, you never know exactly what the path's going to be in front of you. You don't know for sure if you're going to get funding, but you may organize to the point where you will request funding. But in terms of the implementation plan, it's going to be more of a reporting out of what these different groups are doing. We are going to look at metrics. We're going to see what is moving the needle. If the needle isn't moving, then I think at that point, that's when entities that have the money have to look at, well, why isn't the needle moving? And do we need to support that? And do we need to fund that? And that sort of thing.
So in the kind of our approach slide that had the network and all of the nodes for the strategic doing process, I'm counting about almost 20 different kind of networks and working groups. So is it your office that's going to be coordinating the reporting out and the collaboration of all 18 of those working groups?
Yes. Now, keep in mind, some of these groups haven't formed, and it may take a while for them to form. Some of them have formed already and have a little bit stronger presence, but not all of them have formed. And if, depending on my capacity, I'm probably going to push the ones that are in line with the city strategic plan first, and then support the rest of them as I can after. But I'm personally looking to them to drive their groups.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Reed. I just had one brief question to follow up on. You mentioned that this was not specific to Lawrence, or I guess not exclusive to Lawrence when seeking information and gathering input. Can you be a bit more specific about non-Lawrence entities or other parts of the county, or if it goes outside of Douglas County, what those types of partnerships or an involvement were?
Well, at this point, we have no plans to go outside of Douglas County. However, if we do go for the SEDS with the EDA, it may have to turn into more of a regional plan. We'll have to take that as it comes. With the working groups, I'm again letting them define their scope. If they're already set up to serve the entire county, that's wonderful. We would like to serve, we would like all of our working groups to serve the entire county. Some of them may not have the capacity to do that. They may have just the scope to start small and then eventually, as they get their footing, serve the entire county. But to a little bit, well, to a certain degree, this is an experiment, and we are trying to be very flexible and inclusive and get people together who, like I said, are advocates for these different strategies and want to work on them and want to move the needle, make a difference.
Any questions, Commissioner Kelly? Okay, all right, thank you, Britt. Anybody you would like to come add to the presentation, feel free to invite.
Thank you.
Thanks for kicking us off.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Kevin Kelly with Beasley Tech. And I read the Ernst & Young report shortly after it came out. And there was a component in there to build a business incubator. And when I read that, I thought this is something that Beasley Tech could be doing. And so I researched it further. I went and visited some like centers around that region and gathered information and came back and then asked to be part of this group or was asked, I don't know which it was. And ultimately received the go ahead and some support to begin building not an incubator, we call it a business igniter because incubators are too slow. And so it's a business igniter and a prototyping center which has come out of this plan that we had the ribbon cutting on yesterday. And where our goal is to help support individuals and companies and small businesses throughout the county to create more local businesses and to create businesses that make things, because that's what we do. Like at Beasley, we wouldn't teach them how to make food or something like that, but we can teach them how to weld things and how to machine things and design and build things. And one of our bigger goals has kind of evolved from it during the pandemic with our relationships with many companies in the county. We saw them experience a lot of supply chain issues. So we're trying to identify businesses that can be started in Douglas County to support Douglas County businesses. So our goal is to serve 50 in the first year. And yesterday was our official ribbon cutting, but we have eight clients we're working with already on helping them, either existing businesses or a couple new ones. I mean, we have a plumber from Baldwin that needed some really unusual part, that so we produce it on a 3D printer for them. And so I think that from little ones like that to very large ones, where our hope is that, not our hope, our goal is that we'll continue to be a resource to help people in partnership, like with the Small Business Development Center, the EDC. We have one company we're working with right now that came out of KUIP. And so that it's part of a bigger network, and this strategic plan, that's our support for it.
This is Commissioner Portillo. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that example. And I think it provides us a really great substantive example to kind of help me understand this network bottom-up approach that Britt was mentioning. So the Ernst & Young consultant said that we need a business incubator. And I don't disagree with that. But we also, so we have something at Peasley Tech. We have resources at KUIP. We have resources at the Chamber, the EDC. We have other small business development groups. When we have kind of all of these disparate, and this may not, I'm not trying to pick on you, Kevin, this may not be a question for you, but I think it's kind of a broader, this is what I mean when we say community plan. How do we make sure that we're organized to make sure we're not replicating each other, to make sure we don't have holes in that, and to make sure that we're not spreading resources too thin with all of these kind of smaller individual pieces?
And I think
Where's
it's
the
really
organizing
important
piece?
what you're saying. And I think part of that is really that we operate as a network, that we do know. I mean, I'm in meetings with all of these organizations regularly and vice versa. And I think that through that, we learn things that we can do together. We explore new things. So I think that the resources have different targets in each one of those groups, but ultimately they all end up working together. I mean, you know, we work together with all of these organizations. If somebody knows, you know, if somebody comes to us and we know it's something that they should be seeing the Small Business Development Center, that's a referral. So I look at it as rather a network rather than kind of separate entities.
So how do, like if we have a resident of Douglas County who knows that they want to develop some sort of business, how do they know which door in the network to knock on? And how do we know that they'll get referred to the right place?
Part of the idea of this network is that by knowing each other, whatever door they knock on, any door they knock on should be able to get them to the right place. Like I said, if they come to me for something that clearly is not in but I should know the resources in this county to get them to. And that's part of what happens by working together regularly, by knowing the missions and the goals of the different groups within the county. So I think in a way it really makes us stronger, because you can go in the wrong door and find your way to the right door. So it's not you came here, we can't help you, good luck. You know? So I really think as long as we continue to look at it, it's a strength as a network with many entities supporting it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.
I see a hand up. If you want to make a comment, come up to the microphone, please.
Steve Kelly, Lawrence Chamber. I live at 4529 Broadmoor Drive. I just wanted to interject, and I have some other comments coming, but to kind of answer your question, Commissioner Portillo, at an event yesterday, Ryan and I were talking to an individual with an existing company in the county who was talking about their process and how they wanted that they had a need for a particular piece of equipment that would provide value and improve their process. And it seemed very much in this conversation to be engineering and prototyping related. So I've already contacted Kevin today, and Kevin, I don't know if he's talked to him or not, to identify whether this is something that Peasley is equipped to do or who we can connect him to, because there are other organizations statewide, the TDI, the Institute in Manhattan that does prototyping that may be a fit. So that's an example of how, you know, in the conversation, you have to be a good listener to identify and then try to see where we can fit them. And there's no question in my mind in the conversations that Kevin would have with them, if that's not a fit, he will find somebody else to get them to try to get them the appropriate help to allow them to advance their project. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I have a kind of follow up to that. So I really appreciate kind of this idea of the network and kind of we know who to connect. How, like I think about this all the time of implicit versus explicit, right? When we have implicit networks, then you kind of have to have that social capital to be able to navigate an implicit network.
Mhm.
How do we make that implicit network explicit to all of the residents of Douglas County?
I think that's one of the ongoing challenges that we all have and continue to work on. You know, there are a lot of different networks. And one of the things that we have learned is that there are people who don't participate what I would consider to be kind of the ordinary or the traditional networks. And so it does take work. And we have done a number of things working with Jill and others to try to identify, through the Health and Human Services Coalition, how can we connect with additional people? We've tried to also work with the other chambers in the county so that they're aware of this opportunity to maybe connect with people. But it's an ongoing task, and you promote, you go to meetings, you also try to get on agendas where you can talk about the services you're offering, but it's never going to be done. It's going to be a constant effort. We're doing a lot more social media than what we have in the past. It's an ongoing effort, and it's going to take all of us working very hard to continue to do it, because I know from past experience in a past life working at the state, how many times we would give very in-depth presentations on programmatic offerings and assistance available, only to find out that people who were even in that session 2 weeks later are doing something on their own and not taking advantage of the information or the resources that are out there. So it's something that we as a collective group are going to have to continually work on, because it will never be done. There will always be opportunities to do more and to continue to be more creative in terms of how we're disseminating information, how we're connecting. But that's just what has to be done, and it's an ongoing task.
I appreciate that. And I really like the example of, we see these are tough problems in other areas as well. This is ongoing work that will never be done, but how do we have kind of benchmarks that we're holding the collective to for making sure that we're doing better and making this more explicit, and who's responsible for that?
Well, I think that, there are obviously measures that each of us as organizations have in terms of what we're doing and in terms of our actual output. But I think ultimately with a lot of this, whether it's appropriate to say it resides with Britt, because Britt is kind of the master of the process as it currently sits. There are a lot of us who are working in particular areas of this plan. And again, I will say that a lot of the things in the plan that was developed through Ernst & Young are things that we were already working on. And so that is helpful because we already had a head start in some areas. And it has given, I think, strength to some of the stuff we were already doing, but also suggested some tweaks and some directions and some nuances that we haven't had. But there will be reporting, and whether it's through the strategic plan. We did our economic development fundraising campaign, which was based on a lot of these same tenets, that we have measurables that we've built into those that we're responsible for. As KUIP has measurements, I think that it will be very important to hold us to accountability for those, and then roll it together. And there will always be gaps. There will always be more that we can do. But I think as long as we have measurables and we're held to those and continue to work collectively as a community, as a county, to try to move the ball forward, we will continue to make progress. And that's what we need to be held accountable for.
This is Commissioner Kelly. Kevin, do you have one more? I now have a question for you. Thanks, Steve. So I just want to clarify something, and I don't think this is what Britt meant. So she said a lot of this work is being done by volunteers. I want to make sure you are not a volunteer, right?
Yeah, I am. I don't get, no,
Yeah.
no, I am not a volunteer.
Right. So
Now I'm voluntarily serving on the Economic Development Strategic Plan committee process.
okay.
You know what I
So,
mean?
but that is probably an extension of your work
It
as
is.
the
It
executive
is. It
director
is.
of Peaslee Tech.
Well, and particularly in this regard where we're talking about making things. I
Sure.
mean, that's kind of what we do. So.
And I think it is clearly a priority of the Douglas County Commission that we do workforce development, which is why we put
Absolutely.
taxes in our budget towards that group.
Yeah.
You've read the economic development plan that was done by the city, but as a community plan.
Mhm.
Is there anything in that plan that doesn't align with the mission of Peaslee Tech?
I I don't really, I haven't seen anything in it that kind of set an alarm off for me. It seemed to support, the things we were doing. And then it also gave us opportunity to expand what we're doing by adding the business startup.
And just so the public knows, a member of the Douglas County Commission serves on your board, right, on the Peaslee Tech board. And so,
Yes, currently it's Commissioner Kelly.
right. So just making sure people know that. So that's an opportunity for the Douglas County Commission to make sure that the priorities of Peaslee Tech are aligning with the goals of the Douglas County Commission. We may be changing that that structure. However, there will still be an opportunity, well, not an opportunity, a necessity
Right.
for the Douglas County Commission to put people on the Peaslee Tech board to make sure that the priorities of the Douglas County Commission
Right.
and Douglas County as a whole are happening at Peaslee Tech.
That's correct. And, last year we passed 5 strategic goals, when Commissioner Portillo was serving. So that, for over the next 5 years that we're measuring, are we getting there? Are we doing better? What do we need to do more or less of? And all of that is part of that. The county commission obviously is intimately involved with that process.
And so, I guess my point in that all those steps is I really like hearing that you're reading that strategic plan, that you think it aligns with Peaslee Tech's plan, and that your governance structure has the Douglas County Commission and the people of Douglas County in that, so that we are creating that overlap or maybe alignment of strategies. And one of the things I would say to you and to the commission is, if you feel like it is not meeting that goal, that there would be that responsibility to talk to the commission so that we can make sure that we're staying focused on what is a big priority for me as a commissioner, which is workforce development and entrepreneurship, which I'm excited about the new Igniter, and that making sure that the access to that is high. We want to remove as many barriers as we can to our community so that they can access that workforce training, so that we can make sure our employers have access to high quality employees and we can generate more income within our community. So I just am trying to draw some lines between the plan that we just saw and Peaslee Tech and how those things can coexist, but we need to make sure that the responsibilities are clear lines.
And I think they are, and I think they not only coexist, but I think it really, in some ways, it's helping us to further our mission, to go further than we really were even talking about a couple of years ago. Because, the entrepreneurial aspect is also, you don't think what is an entrepreneur, but if we have a family and a person starts a home daycare center, they're an entrepreneur, right? And so you potentially are taking somebody in a very low wage situation and potentially improving their life, and then it improves it for all of us. So while we wouldn't be the people to help them with the daycare center, it is kind of the same idea with somebody that, develops some new lawnmower blade that they want to learn how to produce it. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, commissioners. Adam Courtney with the KU Innovation Park. And just as a reminder, the Innovation Park is a strategic alignment of the Douglas County, City of Lawrence, University of Kansas, and the business community through the Chamber of Commerce, with a mission to create, recruit, grow, and retain primarily tech and life science companies. And we've been part of this process since the beginning, and part of Ernst & Young's findings was that the park was an economic development asset for the community. And so that was a good start, and we feel like we align well with the strategic plan. And so just for an example, one of the goals, and goal number 1 is diversify the economy. We think that's kind of our mission when we're talking about adding the professional, scientific, and tech jobs to the community, a community that's typically highly driven on service industry. And so, we're trying to diversify that so we're more resilient to things like pandemics. Shameless plug to our companies. We just passed the 500 jobs mark for our companies in our system. So we're really proud of that. In addition, the strategic plan talks about entrepreneurship and tech-based companies, which is aligned with where we're at, supporting small and mid-sized businesses, which we have business resources that we try to do that. 60% of our companies are startups. And so taking them from startup, which is even before small, and getting them to small to medium is what we're focused on as well. And then it includes business retention and expansion. As you think about, we're an incubator now. We're building a phase 3 facility, which is really that graduation, retention, expansion facility. We would likely lose some of these companies that need that highly specialized wet lab space that's not available in the region. So we feel like we're meeting that in terms of the economic development strategic plan. One of the other areas is growing women and minority owned businesses, which is one of the metrics. It's a small number now. We're putting some of our resources, our incentive plans specifically towards that targeted group. And then, beyond that, we're trying to understand better what other people are doing that with those resources. I think the chamber will probably talk about what they're doing there, but not only at the local level, but at the state level and at the federal level. We do a lot of work on federal grants, SBIR, STTR, and some of those things, and understanding those tools and landscapes for those companies is important. And so we've started there. We've got a long way to go, obviously, and don't have all the answers, but we're trying to understand that landscape much better. So open for any questions you guys might have.
Good evening. I'm Bonnie Lowe, President and CEO of the Chamber, and I also serve in the EDC board. It struck me when we were talking about collaborations and a little bit about the pandemic that I think one of the reasons why Douglas County was so successful is because of our relationships and our collaborations with our partners. City, county, KU, school district, health community, and business community. And the same thing exists with our economic development partners. We serve on each other's boards, and the example that Steve gave about referring some people to Peasley happens every day. It'll happen tomorrow, it'll happen on Friday, because we're so familiar with each other and our collaboration efforts. It makes our economic development successful in our community. It's a little confusing with the Chamber and the Economic Development Corporation of Lawrence and Douglas County. They are two separate entities. The economic development engine is for the county. The EDC has no employees. So they have a management agreement with the Chamber to provide some services and overhead and a host of other things. We are accountable to the penny. Any governmental funds we receive from the county, which is leveraged with the city's funds, and also our capital campaign that we just completed. We provide services and financial support to some of our other economic development partners, but they are two separate entities. And when we work with Barack and Eudora or Glenn or Dave Hill in Baldwin City area, it's a collaboration, and they serve on our EDC board. So the funds that you provide for decades now, thanks very much, go together to support the entire county. Happy to answer any questions. I think Steve and others are going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of our items that we've been working on at the Chamber.
So Bonnie, I heard Britt say that, when push comes to shove, she's going to push the city's strategic plan first. If there were priorities that the county had, is the EDC who we talk to? Or is it Peasley Tech? Is it BTBC? Where is the right place for us as a commission to say, these are our priorities for Douglas County?
It's an excellent question, Commissioner Kelly. And I think when Lawrence benefits and you look at the city limits, it bleeds into the county a little bit. I mean, Britt can certainly speak to that as well. When you provide us financial support, for the county, I would suggest you come to us. Now, if it's something specifically with workforce or KU Innovation Park, you have some other resources in that realm also. We're happy to help. And if, with any questions that you have or any guidance, and if we can't, we'll find somebody who can. Does that answer your question? Ish?
This is Commissioner Portillo. I appreciate the question, Commissioner Kelly, and I'd like to push it just a little bit further. So I think what Commissioner Kelly is kind of referring to is that we provide very specific funding for the EDC. You mentioned that the EDC has no staff, but that the services are provided by the chamber. So how is it that we as a commission kind of know when we go to talk with Bonnie, are we talking to you with your chamber hat on, with your EDC hat on? How do we get to the EDC discussion if that's where, or is that where the county as a whole sees this strategic planning process going?
If you have a specific question, who would you speak to? Is that your question, Commissioner Portillo?
No, I think that the question is, I mean, Britt mentioned that her focus as the development director for the city is always going to be to prioritize the city's strategic plan. So when we think about strategic planning for economic development for the county as a whole, who has kind of primary responsibility for that? Is it the EDC, or do we maybe not have a space with primary responsibility for that?
I think that would be through us. I don't think I know. The county doesn't have economic development specific staff. We have people certainly that work in that space, but essentially the county contracts with us to achieve those goals. Lawrence is a big part of Douglas County, but it's not the only part of Douglas County. So we try to very deliberately take care of all the needs for the county in the world of economic development. So that would be through us, since we have an agreement to work in the county. Any other questions?
I might, but I'd like to hear from Steve, and I think you said Ryan as well. I'm not
I'll
quite
stick
sure.
around. So
Yeah, okay, thanks.
thanks for the opportunity.
I don't want to give you the impression that I won't be working on the other strategies. My goal is to push all of the strategies, but the funding from the city will be the one, but we will be pushing their strategies. So I don't want to give you the impression that I'm not going to be working on that. Since the county does not have an economic development staff, they rely on me to do the annual report. I do the analysis when it comes to any incentive projects that are going to go forward. So I'm very used to interacting on behalf of the county. So I just don't want you to think that I'm going to forget you. But I think Bonnie has made a great point. I think they would be a great one to go to with their strategies, and through our network, we can decide how, you know, which working groups need to form, or which ones do we need to reach out to really drive the initiatives and the strategies that you see as a priority.
Thank you. Britt. We have Steve, you're coming back up.
Steve Kelly with the Chamber. Commissioner Kelly, since you had a question, I have a few comments yet on something I want to talk about, but I'd be more than happy to answer your question maybe first.
I don't know that I had another question.
Okay.
Welcome to hear you, what you
All
got
right.
to present.
I'm going to be very brief because since I already have taken some time of the commission and the proceedings, but wanted to touch on a couple of the pieces of the strategic plan, give you where we've been with that, and maybe some of the changes that the new strategic plan will probably drive. And the areas of particular interest I'm going to mention are business attraction and then retention and expansion efforts. And we have had significant success over the last couple, 3 years, as you're probably aware of. There, on the attraction side, we've had the Pretzels project, which is now open, modern manufacturing in Eudora, which is now open. There will be a ribbon cutting in May for the U.S. engineering facility out at Lawrence Venture Park. KU Innovation Park is coming online. So those are all very positive. And then on the retention and expansion side, Grandstand did a major expansion a couple of years ago. A Standard Beverage will be opening their new facility, expanded facility in May. And then Berry Global has a major expansion, at least in terms of capital investment and equipment, that'll be kind of online sometime in the summer. So there's been a lot going on in that area already. But one of the things that was recognized in the Ernst & Young plan, and that we already kind of realized and we're already working to some degree on, was being more targeted in terms of attraction. You know, by and large, a lot of what we've done to this point is we've sleuthed and tried to find opportunities, but we've also been kind of takers of orders. There are a couple of entities that we work with very closely, those being the Kansas Department of Commerce and the Kansas City Area Development Council, who have a very strong flow of project activity of various types. It can be manufacturing, it can be office, et cetera. And we are, because we're in kind of a prime spot in the state, have quite a bit of activity that's generated by that. And so we have project flow that comes from that. And if we have the right type of real estate, if logistically it works, from a location standpoint, we have been very active in working with those projects and have had success. Some of the projects that I just mentioned came through that process, but we have not had or not been very active in, and some of that has been driven by COVID, is in the more proactive marketing for particular targets that are great, that are fits for Lawrence, that fit our demographic, that fit our location, that fit our skill set, our strengths in terms of a community. A lot of that connected to the strengths of KU. One of the recommendations that came out of the Ernst & Young plan was a set of targets, which incidentally very closely aligned with some of the work that we had already done. I think in several cases aligned very well with what KU's strengths are. So we're actively engaged now. We've developed a little advisory group that is meeting and starting to put the pieces together to do a more, I guess, more advanced or more deliberate type of attraction work around those strengths. And there are a number of things that you can do. A lot of that's been curtailed by the pandemic and the limits on face-to-face contact and the ability to travel on that. But I think that will be something that you'll see a lot more of going forward as we get that further into development. And then on the retention side, you know, a key part of that is touches with businesses in the community. And we have done that, but I don't think that we have had targets that are as aggressive as we now have. And again, it's been delayed somewhat by the fact that COVID has limited our ability to be out and about and in close proximity with people within the business structure. But we have 100 visits a year that Ryan and I are projected or are expected to make to businesses. And I think that kind of intel will be very helpful for us as well. Because one of the things that I think is really important is we can't help every business in town. Certainly there are some, or in the community or the county as a whole. There are some areas where we have more resources, we have better connections, there are more resources available at the state and federal level. But the key thing, one of the key pieces is knowing what people are thinking about. What are their opportunities? Are there a company that we could do some identification of maybe some export opportunities? Are there some programs that could help them offset some costs of an expansion? And we are gaining traction with that and are having more and more success with those kinds of companies as we're having more opportunities because people are starting to be more aware of that. But I think we need to be more deliberate and we need to do more in that area, I think, to be successful and to really maximize what our impact is. Because I think there are some great things that can be done, but we need to be more in connection with more companies to be able to assist them. And that also requires Kevin and the other people that we've talked about to also be feeding those leads or that information to us so that we can reach out and try to be, you know, maximize the support that we're providing. So thank you.
Hi, Ryan Rains with the Chamber and the EDC. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to be here. Just want to talk for a second about some of the collaborative work that we've been able to do. So I came on with Steve and Bonnie and the team back in March of 2020 and very quickly got acquainted with Jill with the Douglas County E-Community, and we have the Lawrence Metro E-Community. Collectively, those have provided match funding for a little over 1.1 million into the community, Network Kansas dollars, 1.1 million that have come in through gap funding, and about $48,000 worth of grants. since 2013. So we quickly realized though, and Jill's really been leading and championing the jobs group within the anti-poverty, the Douglas County Community Health Plan to end poverty. There's a jobs plank within that, and Jill's been leading that up. And we realized that there is a underrepresentation of persons of color as entrepreneurs within our community. And so looking at some research, trying to understand some of the obstacles and barriers that exist. There was a study that was done by the Brookings Institute, and they found that access to capital, business networking for business resources, as well as business training to help grow and expand businesses were three things that persons of color struggled with and did not have access to at the same level and same rate as white males. And so we felt like to build into the community health plan to end poverty, those should be goals that we should work towards. And so to that end, we've been working to try to address those things. And so part of that showed up in the Rising Together Capital campaign when we decided that we were going to establish a $500,000 revolving loan fund that was going to support what the state is going to qualify as woman-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. And again, learning, quickly realizing with our partners, in order to do that, we felt like we need more than just a loan fund. We need a support system. We recognize that there were folks in our community who were not necessarily getting emails about PPP. Maybe they weren't getting emails about gear, and their businesses were struggling during the pandemic. And so in order to attempt to do a good job at planting seeds for a different future, we decided that we were going to create a new networking space, hopefully engage people that we have historically not seen through some of the traditional networking spaces in the community. Our first meeting will be April 18th. Just printed off the flyers yesterday. So we're partnering with United Way. They've got community navigators, and they've agreed to work with us and share those. They just did a grant program for persons of color in the community. And so we were able to work with Mandy and try to learn some of the things that she's been doing that's made that successful, and how could we work together and learn from her experience. Working with Jill, working with Network Kansas, working with KU Small Business Development Center and Christina, and trying to get people at the table that diversify the table, if that makes sense. We don't want to create the revolving loan fund away from the people that we're trying to serve. And so our intention is at this point to get folks to the table, talk about existing resources, make sure those folks know about the resources that exist. So engaging more people and hopefully, creating a new space for new people, if that makes sense, as well. And then leverage that space to introduce 12-week training program that Network Kansas has certified that would come in and provide 12 weeks of training for folks that are interested in entrepreneurship or that are entrepreneurs and just would like the opportunity to learn more. And then out of that, we're hoping that we'll have a good pipeline of candidates for the revolving loan fund. And there may be folks that don't need to go through that training program that are already in a place where the revolving loan fund would be a good fit for them. The idea of the revolving loan fund is why we're grateful that we have gap funding through Network Kansas. It has to go through a public source. And so folks that aren't bankable because maybe they don't have collateral or other reasons, even maybe students come out of high school, come out of KU, come out of Baldwin City, at Baker, that maybe have a good idea, and maybe $2,000 or $3,000 would be great for them. They could get something started as a student right out of college. Well, I'm not encouraging people necessarily to get in debt, but if that's what somebody wanted to do, maybe they could even apply for this. But again, the nuts and bolts of that, we're trying to let the community build, if that makes sense, as we go along. And so some questions have been, what are the rates going to be? What are this going to be? How much is it going to be available? And I don't know right now. And part of that's because we're trying to let the folks that we're trying to serve help develop that. I will say Network Kansas has an Empower fund that they're piloting around the state right now. And I expect that we'll look at that as a model that we could learn from. But again, I don't think we'll just pick it up and supplant it. Part of, we're hoping we'll be able to provide childcare, and we're hoping that we'll be able to pay some folks as consultants within the community, so that we're not just asking people to volunteer their time with us. But that's some of the fun stuff that we're working on entrepreneurship. There's lots of stuff going on, right? We support anybody and everybody. So if we can help a tech company that's at the innovation park in some way, work with Adam to try to do that. If it's a tech company that's not at the innovation park, how can we help them? If it's a restaurant, retail, somebody wants to start a daiquiri shop, mobile daiquiri shop, all sorts of different stuff. I will tell you that I want to introduce Christina, because she's the new director for the KU Small Business Development Center. And what they do is absolutely phenomenal. And her voice is great. And it's been really good to have her every step of the way, as well as Jill's, as we continue this work with entrepreneurs. So.
Hello, everyone. As Ryan mentioned, my name is Christina Meese, and I work for the KU Small Business Development Center. I just recently took over as the regional director from our previous director, Will Katz, who is with the SBDC for over 15 years. Prior to my role as director, I actually served as a business advisor for 4 years. So if you're not familiar with the Small Business Development Center, we offer completely free and confidential advising services to new and existing businesses. We help businesses at all different stages of the business life cycle, whether they're just getting started or currently in existence. We cover a plethora of topics, from business planning to financial planning to cash flow management to marketing, market research, and everything in between. If a business doesn't know what to do, where to go, what next steps look like, or they just want to know how they're doing, we can help with that. We have access to some really incredible resources that help make the path of entrepreneurship a little less daunting, and then give them lots of information to make informed decisions. Our motto at the KU Small Business Development Center from the day I started has been to do great work and help people, and that truly drives what we do every day. Just to kind of give you a little insight into some of our impact, we do an annual docking survey, which studies the impact that we have at the KU Small Business Development Center. So every year we see around 400 businesses, though in 2020 it was just under 500. We were originally a team of 3, we're now 2, and still seeing the same number of businesses. On average, we've helped small businesses grow their revenue over 10 million a year. We've also helped small businesses access over 15 million in new capital investment every year. We also help on average around 40 businesses start every year. So we really strive to be an excellent resource to the businesses that we serve, and also an excellent community partner. I work closely with the chamber, with Peasley Tech, with the Innovation Park as well. We can't do everything, but we want to partner with local organizations to really serve the business community. I just want to end by saying that I truly love what I do at the SBDC, and I'm so energized and inspired by my work. And although it's been busy and been getting busier, I really love every minute of it. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you all. This is Commissioner Reed. I do have a question. I think, well, it was formulating while Ryan was talking. It may be relevant for both Ryan and you, Christina. I'm curious, I'm kind of just thinking about what pieces of the ecosystem, I suppose, are not here currently, or might be an important piece of that. And I'm thinking about lenders and banks in particular. So the development of the revolving loan fund through the chamber, the gap funding that we have through the e-community programs are really great, and certainly require some partnership from local banks, notably Mid-America Bank. And I heard you mention Dave Hill earlier, so I know that they're a big player. I'm curious if there's any work being done kind of from that systemic level of educating and influencing local lenders and banks in terms of how to break down some of those barriers and systemic issues that we see with with minorities and women not being able to access some of the traditional funds. And I heard you use the phrase, that are unbankable. And I know that there's a lot of layers that go into that. I understand that it is not a simple conversation. And also it's an important one from my perspective, that especially with local banks that we have, how are we having, or how are we thinking about conversations with those folks that are an important access point for people to be able to change the trajectory of their life and their ability to build a business and to create generational wealth and financial stability? Do you all work with lenders around that piece, that like the education piece, and trying to break down some of those barriers to funding?
Sure. So from the small business development perspective, we believe in building relationships. So part of that role is really connecting with local lenders. So a lot of the lenders that small businesses have had success with, we meet with to understand what they're looking for, and then also how to help small businesses really prepare to seek financing. And that's where the Small Business Development Center adds value, maybe not so much in changing some of the systemic biases in banking, but making sure that we help prepare businesses to go in front of a bank. So giving them that confidence. So making sure that they have an adequate plan. So we work with them through that process with the understanding of what banks are looking for, and making sure that the cash flow that they bring to the bank to ensure that they can repay that debt, which is the most important component to banks, is making sure they get their money back. And so we have lots of data that we utilize to make sure that they have very informed cash flow projections, and then also that they're prepared to answer some of the questions. So what is a personal financial statement? What does your credit score look like? These are some of the things that banks are going to be looking for. So we work more with the businesses to get them set up. And then we also are very educated about programs that are available. So I sit on both the Lawrence Metro E-Community Loan Program and also the Douglas County E-Community Loan Program. Our state network partners often with Network Kansas, so we're very involved in a lot of the loans that they have available. There's also a lot of different local resources on the grant and financing side. So if they can't go to traditional banks, we at least want to give them a path to hear some alternative options, and then being educated on how they prepare to pursue some of those options as well, so we can help them in that process.
Thank you, Christina. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that the role you all serve is really one of empowering entrepreneurs and business owners with the tools and information they need. So I appreciate that role. And I know it's a tall order to think about systemic change and starting to unpack some of the biases that exist there. But curious if you have anything to add to that, Ryan.
Sure. I would say a couple of things. I think one, yesterday I had a conversation with somebody from a financial institution about the networking space that we're creating to promote business resources through. And there's interest and I think curiosity about how do we do a better job in our community, making sure that folks have access to capital. And so while I don't want to speak on someone else's behalf, I can tell you that I think there is interest and goodwill in the community to figure out how do we serve our community holistically. Absolutely. And another thing that I'll mention is, when we work with folks, I try to consistently tell anyone that while I may not refer them to a financial institution in the position that I'm in, I'm more than glad to go with them to meet anybody to try to, make sure they don't feel like they have to go alone if that's an issue. And I can't echo enough what a great resource Christina is and the KU Small Business Development Center and Christian Hopkins over there as well, because they really do everything, I think, within their power to make sure that a person is set up for success when they move to their next step, whatever the next step is.
Right. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Any questions from?
And I'll just mention, part of our funding goes through and supports the KU Small Business Development Center of our budget. So just, you're probably already aware of that, but I just want to make sure I mention that.
Christina, thank you so much for the presentation. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of the financial structure of the KU Small Business Development Center?
Yes, so we have a cooperative funding model. So the KU Small Business Development Center isn't a unique organization. There are 13 SBDCs in the state of Kansas and over 1,100 throughout the nation. And we all work on that cooperative funding model. So we get federal funding through the SBA, we get state funding through the Kansas Department of Commerce, and we get funding from KU, our host institution, and also the city and county. So all of that comes together to be our budget.
I don't have questions. I have a few comments, but we might want to take public comment first and then.
All right, thank you all for your comments. With no further questions from commissioners, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Is there anyone here with us in the room that would like to provide public comment on this item? Seeing no such indication, I'll double check online. Okay, I'll bring it back. We'll close public comment and bring it back for conversation. Commissioner Kelly?
So first, I want to thank you all for being here. It's really great. I mean, we are so lucky in Lawrence and Douglas County to have so many resources when it comes to economic development. When you think about, and that hasn't always been the case. You know, we didn't have workforce training locally like we do at Peasley Tech. That's not dismissing the workforce training we do at the University of Kansas and Haskell. Those are great, but this is another layer that we didn't have. The work that we're doing in entrepreneurship is really exciting. The Small Business Development Center, welcome. We're glad to have you and I really appreciate your work. And then KU Innovation Park, it really creates a broad portfolio of how we work on economic development. And I do think for those who aren't familiar, there's more of a structure than maybe we talk about. And really the EDC is the Economic Development Corporation of Lawrence and Douglas County. Lawrence is the largest city, but it also includes Baldwin and Eudora and those representatives, and people on that EDC are in there. So while we saw Lawrence's economic development plan, and it's a community development plan, we could also hear a presentation from Eudora about their economic development plan or the strategic plan, or Baldwin or any of those cities. For us as commissioners, I think that all falls under the EDC. So it was helpful, Bonnie, to hear you say like the EDC is sort of our go-to when we're talking about like, what are our priorities? Kevin, you're on that EDC. I know Adam, you're there as well. I serve on there as an ex officio. Sarah's on there as well. I think we do have some work to do around e-communities and Jill and versus Ryan and how we might make better efficiency of that. But I think there is a structure there. The city's plan is within that, and it may inform Douglas County about how to do things. But I think we also need to make sure we make space that not every priority in the city is necessarily the priority of the county, that every priority of the city of Lawrence doesn't necessarily mean it's the priority of Baldwin. It's a very different community. And so this has been really helpful. I'm really glad that you all were here tonight because it helps me sort of create that structure. And I hope for other commissioners and the public, it does as well. Whether we take pieces of the Lawrence economic development strategic plan, I would love to see some like, and it's on the website for the EDC if you want to look at it, what those strategic goals are for that group, and just consistently make sure that we're lining up and making those connections or crosswalking those goals so that it's clear for people, this is where Douglas County's work lies. It's not necessarily in conflict with what the city of Lawrence has or Baldwin, but it all works together. So it really helped me personally sort of create that structure that I think a lot of people miss when they say like, what is Douglas County's role in economic development? It's a lot clearer than I think people understand. We have very clear priorities, whether it's workforce development, whether it's business growth, whether it's some of the newer things we're talking about like childcare and entrepreneurship isn't really new, but we've added some things to that recently. And I think that it was just really helpful to me to hear how we might structure that. So thank you for being here.
Thank you all for coming. This Commissioner Reed, this was a helpful conversation for me too. I appreciate that you all took time to come and have a collective conversation with us and help map out a little bit more about where we've been and where we're at, and some of the goals of where I think we're headed. So, and Christina, welcome. I appreciate your energy a lot. You're obviously very dedicated, and I learned a lot about your organization today, which I didn't know so much about before. So I want to point that out in particular. And Britt, thank you for making time to come and give us an overview of how this plan was developed and what your thoughts are going forward. I do think that there's a lot of strength in a network approach, and that, what we were kind of talking about earlier. And Kevin, I appreciated your answer that if somebody knocks on the wrong door, so to speak, to get for the question that they have, that a strong network of all of the players in the community means that they'll get directed to the right door, and that they will have an introduction to the right person or the right office that can support them with whatever their goals are. So I appreciate that energy, and think that that's something to really stay focused on, no matter who the players are, who moves in and out of positions, because we know sometimes institutional knowledge can go away with somebody when they leave an organization or leave a position. I think a benchmark of a really strong network is that information has been kind of codified somewhere and really put into policy and practices and documents that everybody understands, so that work can be picked up and continued in a way that is not disruptive and that just continues to build on itself. So I'm excited to see where we're going.
This is Commissioner Portillo. I echo my fellow commissioners. Thanks. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. And I think that both Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Reed are kind of getting at that. How do we make some of the implicit work more explicit? And in particular, making sure that we are codifying some of these network connections. So if we have players moving in and out of the network, that we don't lose a lot of the momentum and a lot of the collaboration. Collaboration takes a lot of work. I mean, Kevin mentioned everybody's meeting regularly. Those meetings are meetings are part of the work. And so how are we recognizing some of that, but also making it really explicit for our community that there are some of these shared goals and explicit ways to connect with all of these resources. So thank you for being here, and thank you all for sharing the work that you're doing.
It's Commissioner Reed again. I'll just remind anybody who's listening or watching, this is a presentation only. There's no action to be taken on this item. I also want to acknowledge and appreciate that all of you shifted your schedule a little bit. We had you scheduled at a different time originally. So thanks for your accommodation and flexibility there. Have a good rest of your evening. With that, we'll move on to item 4.2, which is a presentation from Zoning and Codes about a temporary business use permit.
Carl Bauer with Planning and Zoning is here. Carl, I think this is your inaugural presentation. So I'd like to welcome you to the commission, and we're real excited to have Carl on board working with our Planning and Zoning Codes team.
Thank you. Would you be able to admit me on Zoom so I can share my screen? All right, there we go. Thank you again. As Sarah said, my name is Carl Bauer, and I'm the new planner with Zoning and Codes. This is a request from CL Maurer of Land Plan Engineering on behalf of Dan C. King, the property owner, to allow a burn pit operation southeast of town. So first, a little bit of background. The applicant is requesting a burn pit to burn vegetation. So landscaping waste, trees, shrubs, brush, that sort of thing. And they're anticipating to bring in about 2 or 3 truckloads of vegetation on a typical day. The property currently consists of an occupied single-family residence that's rented out to a tenant, some ponds from a borrow pit that are remnants from when K10 was constructed, a gravel parking lot that's adjacent to the burn site for site equipment, as well as some agricultural uses. So as I mentioned, Highway K10 borders the property to the northwest. A TBU was previously approved for the property to allow for that borrow pit for the highway construction. There was later a request to rezone the property to an industrial district for a recycling facility that was voted down by the BOCC because of some noise concerns that the recycling facility would create from crushing construction material. But a CUP on the property was approved for reclaiming the borrow pits with a clean rubble landfill. So those ponds today are being filled in with clean rubble, construction waste, that sort of thing. The CUP is still active, and a 5-year review is set to take place this spring. So first, to give you an idea of where this is located, it is southeast of town, just south of the 23rd Street exit on Highway K10. And here's an aerial image showing closer up where it's located, just south of the Public Works building, southeast of town. There is floodplain and floodway present on the property. All of the areas in dark blue are within the 100-year floodplain, and this area here is within the floodway. The proposed burn site is located outside of the floodplain, right about here. And this is the site plan that the applicant submitted. The proposed burn area, as you can see, is outlined right here. The parking area right here, and access comes from the north along this driveway. The house on the property is located here, and you can also see Highway K10 nearby as well. So in reviewing this, we looked at a number of factors, and I picked some out to review with you. As far as traffic, there is a designated haul route that was considered in coordination with the Public Works Department, and that's in order to minimize conflict with some residences in the area. As far as health impacts and other negative impacts on neighboring property owners, there are some concerns about the smoke causing visibility issues on Highway K10. Some of those concerns were raised during a similar proposal for a burn pit just to the west back in 2018. We did reach out to KDOT several times and haven't heard any comments regarding this proposal. The applicant, when asked about mitigating smoke and visibility issues on the highway, said that they're going to try to avoid burning on days when wind is blowing in that direction. They intend to burn when the wind is blowing towards the northeast, and that area is not quite as populated. There aren't as many houses in that area. And also to mitigate any negative issues, burning won't be allowed when burn bans are in place. And there are a number of conditions that are attached to the staff recommendation that would further serve to mitigate any issues. As far as security, we haven't really raised a lot of concerns with this. The only residence really adjacent to the burn pit is the one that's on the property. When I visited the site yesterday, there were signs indicating that there are security cameras in place. And as mentioned, we did reach out to other agencies. Approvals were issued for the burning from Consolidated Fire District Number 1 and KDHE. And prior to burning, the applicant does need to notify emergency services, including dispatch and the fire department, before they start burning. And as mentioned, KDOT hasn't provided any comment on this issue. And as far as a public gain, this proposed burning will provide disposal of vegetation in the Douglas County area. In speaking with the applicant, most of the vegetation that they're going to be hauling to the site is from Douglas County and the immediately surrounding area. We don't have a lot of this type of service in the area, and one of the most common complaints that our office receives is from hauling vegetation and burning it on people's property. So we're hoping that the approval of this application will help mitigate some of that. So as mentioned, I visited the property yesterday and took some pictures. This is looking at the existing borrow pit, which is the pond right here. And you can also see the house on the property right in there. There you can see some of the piles on the property, and again, the edge of the borrow pit and the house. This is entering the site. Here's a view of the pile. This is looking to the south, coming in that driveway from the north. They have already started piling up vegetation. And here's some pictures looking up close at the pile. It's mostly tree stumps and tree limbs that are in the pile. So with that, staff is recommending approval. The applicant requested a 5-year approval period with a possibility of an extension. Staff is instead recommending approval for a 1-year period with the possibility of a 6-month administrative exception. This is in order to mitigate any unforeseen impacts. So we're not waiting that whole 5-year period in case something comes up. And we have the list of 9 conditions there as well. This is to further serve to mitigate any negative impacts, and it reinforces some of the approvals that are present in the Fire District #1 approvals, as well as the KDHE approvals. And with that, I'm available for any questions. The applicant and the property owners are here as well.
Great, thank you so much, Carl. Any questions from commissioners? My question is about the smoke mitigation. That's the one public comment that was noted, that was received. And the language of we'll try not to burn unless the wind is blowing northeast. I guess I'm just curious how much conversation, if you can characterize some of the conversations staff has had about that particular concern and effective mitigation, because the proximity to the highway does give me some concern about that and the potential impact of loss of visibility and the impact there. So can you just flesh that conversation out a bit more for me?
So the use of the word try, that was verbatim what we received from the applicant. So if you have any further questions on that, I would defer to him.
Carl, I'm sorry. So I noticed in the staff recommendation, it says that they need to contact the Wakarusa Fire Department and dispatch. Is it your thinking that the Wakarusa Fire Department would say, don't do it if the wind is too strong, or that dispatch would say, you know, because it also says in the staff recommendation on the conditions, burning, no party shall conduct a burn that causes health, traffic, or safety hazard. So when I read that, I mean, there's an enforcement mechanism we have that if they do burn and it does cause a traffic hazard or it does cause a public health hazard, we have people who will, you know, speak to the applicant, speak to those who have the permit and say, look, you can't burn during that time. I mean, it seems to me that there are some layers there. Is that what planning
That's
is
the
thinking?
intent.
Okay.
So if this does create any issues such as visibility concerns or causing health impacts, there is that enforcement mechanism that the permit could be revoked.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Reed again, and just to make sure I heard correctly, they will be required to call in the burns, right? Which is typical because we have the burn ban hotline. So obviously they wouldn't be able to burn on days that there's
Correct.
a burn ban already in effect, and otherwise they're going to be reporting them just like any private landowner would be. Is the expectation that, assuming there are no burn bans in effect, that this will be a daily activity? Because I remember the beginning of your presentation said 2 to 3 truckloads a day, but I don't know that that equals burning every day.
And again, in terms of frequency, the applicant would be able to answer that better than I could.
Okay. Is it the applicant is here? Is that right?
Correct.
Would you be willing to come up and chat with us a little bit, please?
Could you take down your share screen?
C.L. Maurer with Land Plan Engineering. I'm here with Dan King's here and his wife's also here, Denise. When it comes to burning, where this is located, I understand you guys are concerned. The smoke is going to go, if it is even from the south or from the southwest, which is normal around here, it's going to go right up 1750 Road, which is 1.5 miles from K10. Unless it's a very, you know,
If it's a calm day, you're not going to have anything over K10. So it's going to be up in the air, heat rises, so it's kind of a natural thing. It's not like it is just west of us, where that burning was less than 500 feet from K10. I understand the concern then. Yeah, there's a lot of smoke in it. Also got to understand that that's all K10 right away north of us until you get on the other side, almost to K10, the old K10. And then that's the only residence you're going to see is around the school, the old school district. So between the burn all the way up to there, that's the only residence that's in this area. Yeah, we have residents to the west, northwest of us. They're still 1.5 miles away. So I understand there's concern along that 31st Street corridor right there. But the odds of coming from the southeast breeze, that's not everything, that's just not common. There's usually just south or southwest. And I understand mitigating it. It's going to be small piles. You can't do large piles. I mean, it's just right now, yeah, we have a lot out there right now, but that's just because we were waiting on this process. And then we'll just do small tiles at a time, because you just can't do that much heat that much at one time. So, and then we are often in service. We'd like to open this up to, landscapers around the area to come. We haven't figured out a time, how often they can come or when they can come, because he has to man that and supervise them coming in, make sure we don't get trash, that we do get landscape material. So that timing, we haven't, worked all those details out yet, but it will be coming, and that's a service that this will provide. And from my understanding in the county, I guess it gets a lot worse than what it used to be, where people are just taking it out and throwing it in either wildlife and parks area, or just driving out with a truckload of leaves and letting them blow out. I've seen that happen too, where someone just gets leaves in their yard and they put a little tarp over till they get out of the city, take the tarp off and let it drive up and down the highway till they're all gone. So just a common thing.
Thank you for the visual. I hope that will be less frequent. Thank you for that explanation. That helps me. So it sounds like, especially with burning smaller piles, which makes sense to me and will help mitigate it a lot, I think, that it will be a pretty regular activity, but not necessarily every day, all day.
And if it doesn't have a project at the time, we won't have, right now, this is from your trail that's going north of Lawrence. That's where a lot of these trees are coming from right now. It's a big job. It's 1.5 miles, I think, of trails. So there's a lot of trees in that. That's a lot of trees. You don't really have landscapers will probably be bringing you, but they're not going to be that big of trees. They're going to be smaller shrubs and dead stuff. So.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Anybody here for public comment? I don't think so. Anybody online? Yes, okay.
You got it. I can. Karen Heeb is online for public comment, and we're going to move her into the panel. Karen, you can unmute yourself and provide public comment. Karen, can you unmute yourself to provide public comment?
Unmute. Okay, got it there?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciated the comment about try when I was reading through the materials concerning the burning. That really jumped out at me, that they were going to try not to have the burning on windy days. And so with the fact that they actually are going to check in with the Wakarusa Fire Department before they burn, sometimes there is not a fire hazard warning out. And I have checked with them when I've needed to burn some things, and they have told me don't burn today. And so I think that's important that they do check in before they burn, because they may not think it's a problem, but it may be. So I think there were 3 different things on the letter that I sent in. The second one was about the if things are don't seem to be going well, can that be limited to less than a year? And I think it was mentioned that there's a 6-month time, and perhaps if there was real problems that could be brought before the commission to discuss. And the third thing that I was concerned about, or am concerned about, is if it is open to the public, then the route that the truckers are to take is off of 1750 Road, and not to come down North 1300 Road. But how is that going to be limited or handled if individuals or and that's what I had understood was going to be open to the public. How is that going to be taken care of so we don't have that kind of traffic? So thank you for allowing me to ask these questions.
Thank you, Karen. Is there anybody else online for public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and close that and bring it back to discussion. To follow up on those questions, Carl, it doesn't sound to me like it's entirely open to the public, but rather to some contractors, local landscapers, and people who are hauling larger amounts, right? It's not going to be a private landowners or homeowners can come drop off things. Is that accurate?
At this time, yes.
Okay.
It may open to the public in the future, and that would require additional review.
Okay. Would it require potentially, when you say additional review, a different TBU permit, or perhaps just some additional conditions and a change of the same permit?
I'm going to defer to Tanya on that one.
Okay. And then while you're coming up here, Tanya, I'll just also ask for some clarity around zoning and codes process for responding to any complaints or concerns you might receive from adjacent landowners, and what that step-by-step would look like.
Yeah, Tanya Voigt, zoning director. So currently, right now, the strange thing is that this is a conditional use permit. They have the permission to do the clean rubble, borrow pit, landfill use. They actually wanted the burn use during that time, but burning on a site is not a permitted use with a conditional use permit. So what we anticipate we would like to do, instead of treating these as temporary business use permits, is actually site planning them with a conditional use permit, but that requires a text amendment change to the conditional use permit language. So this is something that is a temporary permitting path forward until we make a text change. But in the future, hopefully we can handle that with the conditional use permit application.
Tanya, can I ask a clarifying question about that? Is that representative of why staff is recommending a 1-year approval when 5 years was asked for with that potential 6-month extension that was mentioned?
So currently our temporary business use regulations allow us to really only approve a temporary business use for 1 year. There would maybe be an opportunity that we could administratively approve additional years if the commission wanted something like that. But because this is such a new use and it does have the potential to have a great impact, I think we feel most comfortable with maybe just an administrative 6-year and then bring it back. Hopefully by that time, we've already amended the conditional use permit language and can permanently site plan it. So then the TBU won't be necessary in the future.
Thank you. And I derailed you. My second question was about just process for any complaints or concerns that would get brought up to your office.
Yeah, so John Bullock is sitting over there and he gets to assist us with these quite often. Our office is typically tasked with any of the administrative reviews of conditional use permits, as well as anytime there's a violation of any of the conditions. So if we get a complaint from the public that there's a violation, we investigate it. At that point, if we find that it's a legitimate complaint and it's a condition and we see that they're in clear violation of a condition, we give the applicant the opportunity to correct it and come into compliance. Sometimes that's almost immediate. Sometimes there's a learning curve, especially when I think Ms. Heeb mentioned, the haul route. If there really are new landscapers, people who haven't used that site before, we do have to give them just a little bit of grace at the very beginning of a permit process. But then we expect once they've messed up once, the second time they've got it right. If it were something that was a repeated issue where they were not able to bring the condition into compliance, then we would bring that back to the Board of County Commissioners.
Great, thank you. Any follow-up?
Tanya, don't go anywhere. Thank you. So this question came up about, whether it's contractors or whether it's the public. And I can see that that may get a little sticky on who is a contractor and who is the public. And I suppose we could put a condition on that if it was open to the general public, then it would need to come back to us for review, and so we could talk about how that route was established. I see CL is up here, so I would ask, how would the applicant feel about that? But can you just talk about where's the line? I mean, we talk about contractors being landscapers and the general public. Is that a line we can draw?
So this is something we kind of actually sprung on Mr. King and CL. In the county, we have continued to have some reoccurring meetings with Chief Baxter, because as the county gets more dense and more housing comes into the community, there is the likelihood that less people have experience with burning on properties. And so the out of control grass fires, those things seem to be reoccurring more and more often. And we recognize, because we work with landscapers and anyone who has conditional use permits related to tree and brush removal, that we have landscapers who live in subdivisions that are zone CP. They're on a 3-acre lot and they're bringing all that brush to those sites. First of all, their covenants don't allow them to bring brush to the sites. And we have probably 3 or 4 pending violations right now where a landscaping company has nowhere to take the brush, and they are current violations. But if we don't have an option for someone to take it somewhere, then we're not doing a service. And so we actually reached out to Dan and CL to see if this could be a little bit broader scale conversation. I think originally their intention was just for it to be their contracting brush that they use on their sites that they're contracted on. And we are really trying to identify a need in the community that we're really lacking. There's been conversation, do we need a county run brush site? Do we have land for that? Well, we probably don't. At least maybe not big enough, and it takes resources and staff and everything else. But I do think we're at the breaking point that we actually need to figure out some solutions, and maybe a little quicker than we even want to. So we asked Mr. King if he would be open, especially with some of the landscape contractors that have nowhere to take the brush, if maybe by appointment only, he would be willing to, they could pay a fee and then they could drop their brush at that site. As for open to the general public, we register home-based businesses, so we're able to verify if they're a business or just a regular landowner. I don't know if he has an intention of letting that be open by appointment to just a general landowner. I think there is also a need for that, honestly. There are a lot of landowners that would choose to take their brush to a site and not burn it because they don't have experience with fire, but there's nowhere for them to take it right now.
So what if I hadn't thought about appointment only? That's helpful. So yeah, I'd be interested if
That's kind of what we were just talking about. Dan wants to make sure he knows who it is that's coming, so it's got to be his permission. So with that, if he gives them permission, he'll give them the route so that we get the truck traffic, and also set the time when he has somebody out there so we know what we're getting and we don't have all the other stuff. But yeah, it's by his permission whether they come on a site or not.
So you'd be okay with us putting a condition that this is for by appointment only, burning only, in order to communicate appropriate traffic routes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Reed. Thank you for that clarity. That was really helpful. And Commissioner Kelly, I like that suggestion. The by appointment only stuck out to me also. And that makes sense. It's good management and then can evolve in the future as we see. And Tanya, I appreciate understanding the CUP and temporary business use kind of difference, because I was a little curious why it wasn't a CUP and why it was coming to us that way. So that makes sense to me. I also think that the recommendation of a year at first is just a good cautious measure. It gives an opportunity to review everything and then determine what the if you all see opportunity for growth in that, then you can amend your application perhaps to allow for more different things. And then I also think that the location is really helpful in terms of its proximity to Consolidated Fire District number 1. So, knowing that that is a very short drive is a good safety measure. And yeah, I think that has addressed all of my questions. Any lingering concerns or thoughts?
I'm
I'll
happy to
look
make
for
a motion.
Great.
Yeah. I move to approve a temporary business permit to allow burn pit operation to consist of the open burning of trees and brush located at 1289 East 1750 Road for a 1-year period from March 30th, 2002 to March 30th, 2003, with the possibility of a 6-month administrative extension with the conditions as listed and including an additional condition that all burning would be done by appointment only and travel routes would be communicated to all using the burn pit attached in the memorandum. Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. Thank you all. Okay. It is 7:41. We're in the home stretch, but I just want to see if commissioners need a break. Okay. I heard I can go either way. So Sarah, do you have something to contribute to that? Okay, let's push through. Thank you all. All right, item 4.3 is a bonus agenda item for this evening, and I will go ahead and let Sarah introduce this.
Commissioners, I appreciate your indulgence as we walk this item onto the agenda tonight. County Counsel John Bullock is here, as well as County Clerk Jamie Shu are here and I want to note that the updated information, both the PowerPoint presentation and the petition are included online in the packet now. John, I don't know if you want to come forward and just be ready, Jamie, and we can turn this over to you for your comments, and then John can give the presentation.
Sarah, while he's setting that up, things that aren't currently in the packet include the 2 attachments that are supposed to be in your memo. Just as I couldn't find them.
On
the little government relations memo.
Okay, I'll have to get those added later.
No worries.
So sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
Commissioners, thank you for kind of letting us jump onto the agenda. I want to give you kind of a background of why this occurred. In KSA 15-117, it says that once that petition is completed and approved, we have to go on to the next commission meeting. And so it was completed and approved yesterday. So this is the next commission meeting. So that's why it's kind of a walk-on item. There has been a petition that has been submitted to the county clerk's office for the incorporation of a new city. That city is called Clearfield, Kansas. And so it has the right number of signatures. It appears to be in its proper form. So what the law says next is that we need to set a hearing date to hear that. I think John's going to go through a little bit about some of the additional stuff, but really the only thing that needs to happen right now is to set a hearing date. The hearing date has to be not less than 30 days from yesterday and not more than 90 days from yesterday. This hearing is a pretty complex hearing. Miami County just went through this about a year ago. And so the recommendation is that the hearing would be on June 15th, because that would give enough time for all parties involved to really kind of prepare for that hearing. But also that we could give proper notice to all of the landowners, the cities, and the entities that are involved. So the recommendation is that we would set a hearing date for June 15th of this year.
Amy, for that introduction. John, do you have more to share with us?
I do, and I'd like a little help with my PowerPoint from Sarah or Jill. I believe it's loaded on here. I don't do this often enough that I know how to run the machine. I'm sorry. Commissioners, would any of you like a paper copy of the PowerPoint slides? Got it in the packet? Got what you need? Okay.
Do you know on the? Oh, okay. Oh, hold on. That's oh, sorry. I got it. Never mind. Found it. I found it. Sorry. I know. I'm sorry.
Which button do I push, Jill, to move forward?
Share it.
Thanks. You go back one slide. There we go. Which button do you want me to push forward? Got it. Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, thanks, Jill. Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. John Bullock, Douglas County Councilor. My plan is just to give you an overview of the process that you will follow reviewing this petition for incorporation. I'm not going to attempt to cover every single detail, but just give you the gist of it. We'll spend more time on it as we get into it. As Jamie alluded to, most of what's going to happen is not happening tonight. It will happen over the course of the next several weeks and beyond. Being the illegal, Jill, I'm not really getting this to go forward. Enter. Hit the arrow button, but it didn't go.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You may just be able to do that. Just hit the.
Okay. All right.
We'll try that.
Thanks. So I just want to give a disclaimer for anyone who's reviewing these slides that there are elaborate statutes on this. And so I've not attempted to summarize every single aspect of the law. So please refer to the statutes in case of that. Okay, as we're going to talk about Kansas statutes 15, and following. There are some materials here about what you'll expect to see in the petition. I don't intend to read these slides to you, but when you get into it, you'll see the kind of information. It's pretty elaborate, and so you'll have quite a bit of information in the petition itself. You'll also be receiving more information as we go through the hearing process. Some highlights here. You'll see the quantity of land, a description of the existing facilities, the reason the petitioners are seeking to become a city, and the location. You'll also get some information in your petition packet about the assessed valuation of the real and personal property. And now to what's, I think, really the meat of my presentation is the process. And this is the first step is that your county clerk will examine the petition and report it to you. That just happened. You'll designate a time and place for the hearing. You'll do that and presumably at the conclusion of this staff report. Then Jamie will give notice to the public There's some specific ways that the county clerk is required to do that and the timing, which is outlined in the statute and summarized in the slide. There also goes, there's notice also goes to surrounding cities, planning commissions, and so forth. The director of the Division of Community Development of the Department of Economic Development, which I'm not sure that exists anymore, but it may be the Department of Commerce at the state level. And then any city within 5 miles of the nearest boundary. We don't have 2 counties involved here, so that's not an issue for us. Then eventually, and whether it's June 15 or whenever the commission sets it, you'll have a hearing. It's conducted in the manner that you deem best suited to the occasion. People who are in the area are allowed to be heard and present information. The hearing may be adjourned from time to time, meaning you don't have to do it all at one point. There isn't any outside deadline either. So, I mean, presumably you wouldn't drag it out forever, but there's no shot clock, if you will, on how quickly you have to get it done. There are a number of factors that the commission will consider. They're summarized in this or stated in the statute and summarized on the slides. Population and population density, the land, platted and unplatted land, development in the area, past expansion, growth projections, cost and adequacy of governmental services, and the effect of the proposed action on adjacent areas. As you can see, these are rather broad. You would probably expect to hear evidence about these considerations during your hearing. Your decision will be governed, as most decisions that you make are, by the normal standards that you would not want to act in a way that's arbitrary or biased or prejudgment, but then you'll have a lot of latitude as long as there's evidence on the points to evaluate these factors. If the territory or any part of it is within 5 miles of an existing city, you take into account these additional considerations as listed on the slide. Some more factors that come up when you are in proximity to other cities. You can see what those are. And then the last bullet point on this slide is really a sort of a catch-all. The general effect upon the entire community should there be additional cities in the area. All of these and other considerations having to do with the overall orderly and economic development of the area and to prevent an unreasonable multiplicity of independent municipal governments. I'm not emphasizing that because it's the most important factor. I'm just pointing out that it's a catch-all factor. It gives the commission a lot of latitude to make a judgment that's in the best interest of the community. In additional authority, the board may hire consultants, issue subpoenas, compel the attendance of witnesses and so forth. You can cause a stenographic record to be made. Why would you do that? The only potential consideration there is if there's a court challenge of the decision. It's permitted by statute that if someone is aggrieved, is the word they use in the statute, by your decision, they can take that to district court. It would be within your discretion whether to do any of the things listed here. After the hearing has been adjourned, and that Latin word just means without further proceedings. So really what it means is when you've heard all the evidence that you want to hear and you're ready to start deliberating, you consider it. There's an opportunity to get additional information that's summarized in that second point. And whoops, I went too far. Let me see if I can back up, Jill. Okay. There's denial and there's granting. This slide addresses more of the subject. If you decide to deny the petition, you would evaluate all of those factors that we just summarized. Additionally, you may deny or shall deny the petition if it's determined that present or future annexation, creation of a special service district or districts would better serve the interest of the area. Again, it says shall be denied. That's not to say the other factors are not relevant. This is just one that is specifically called out. If you determine not to incorporate the city, you make an order so stating. And then in the case that the territory is within 5 miles of an existing city, it requires a unanimous vote. If the board determines that the territory should be incorporated, then you adopt that order. And then they become a body politic and corporate. And there's some provisions for elections that follow as far as who would be running the city in terms of its mayor. City council is the initial form of government that could be later changed if the city chooses to do so. So current action items for now, set the hearing date, designate the place of hearing. Later, but soon, we have the publication of the petition and notice of hearing. And as summarized on the slide, the other notices would go out. Future action items would be as listed here, expert consultants, subpoenas, and so forth. Then you, once you've heard all the evidence, you'll review the factors and make the decision. And that's a summary of the process. Can I answer any questions?
This is Commissioner Reed. You answered all of my questions, so thank you for that overview of the process. Questions from fellow commissioners?
No, I don't think I have questions at this time. I'm excited for this process, though.
This is a very interesting new process for all of us to learn. I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment.
Sorry, I guess I do have a question for Jamie, if he's still there, if we could stop
Yes.
sharing screen.
I'll ask Jill again.
Jamie, you
Yes, I'm
mentioned that Miami County recently went through this. Could you tell us a bit about that process and some things that we might need to think through as we're considering all of this? You mentioned it was contentious. I'm just kind of wondering why.
Well, actually, Miami County's timing's a lot like ours. The petition was presented, I believe, in the 1st of April of last year. They had a hearing in June. And then they did quite a bit of discovery for a number of months with expert witnesses and so forth. And then they made their decision in October. And then I know that that has gone on to a legal proceeding, but you know, there hasn't been a lot of incorporations in the state of Kansas. So I think we are kind of lucky that they kind of went before us and gave us a kind of a roadmap on how to do this. Because I can tell you, I haven't dealt with one. I've spent a lot of time reading about incorporations in the past few weeks. So yeah, I think they kind of have helped us, you know, figure out how this process will work. And then I think it will also help us with kind of how that hearing looks like and who participates in it.
I would add also, Commissioner Portillo, that Jamie has reached out to the Miami County Clerk, and I intend to try to reach out to the County Administrator in Miami County, get some additional information as to how that process went, and all the different steps to help us get ready for this hearing.
Miami County actually has a really good part of their webpage dedicated to this process that shows everything, all the documents, all the hearings, everything. And I can share that link with you. It was really instructive and helpful.
Yes, please. I'd love to see that. Thank you.
Any further questions from commissioners? Okay, I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Don't believe we have anybody here for that. Nobody online. Okay, close public comment, bring this back for any continued conversation. I will just say that I'm always excited to learn about a new process. This is just sort of a thing I hadn't even considered was a possibility. I'm not sure why, but so I think that it will be, it'll be an interesting thing for our community to learn more about. And I appreciate all of the work that's had to be done in preparation for this and figuring out what our next steps are and to make sure that we follow the process, which sounds like some relatively convoluted statutes. So thank you, John, for helping decipher and make sure you lay out a clear process for us. Any other comments from commissioners?
Commissioners, the only comment I'd make is that June 15th was just the date that County Council and the County Clerk and I discussed. There is a little wiggle with that. So if the commissioners wanted to push it back a week, I think we could still be inside that 90-day window. So, but we do want to pick one that we can stick with and My recommendation would be that we would have it at our regular 5:30 meeting and in the county commission chambers, just to clarify. I believe if we felt like the crowd attendance would be, so we could try to designate for that for another location or something like that at a later time if we needed to.
This is Commissioner Reed. I appreciate that, Sarah. I was wondering if I thought of it as a part of our regular business agenda also, at least to begin, because I heard that the hearing may be continued since there is no shot clock, as you said, John. If we felt it necessary, would we be able to change the date or location at a later time? If we set a hearing today by motion, is that changeable if we get information that leads us to believe that's necessary? I'm sort of just trying to plan for all possibilities. It makes sense to me that it would just be here in the chamber room and a part of a regular agenda item to begin. And I don't have any opposition to June 15th. I guess I trust that as best as it can be, it is aligned with other busy things we have on our calendar that month for that season, really.
This is Commissioner Portillo. I'm a big fan of June 15th. I think we should stick with June 15th if at all possible.
Yeah, I would say that I think the thing that we could take into consideration if we were going to continue it after June 15th, if for some reason we felt like we needed a different location, we could do that. I mean, I think it is highly likely this will not be resolved in one hearing.
Sure.
Based off of how this has gone in other places. So I think knowing ahead of time that this is the first conversation of it on June 15th, we could, if there are no other issues, then it could technically be resolved. But I would say that if there were more discussion needed and more time needed to take public comment, we could do that at a different location, different time.
Okay.
From there.
Okay.
I would mention that June 15th, I'm planning on having as a discussion on ARPA funds. So it is a busy season for us. So my hope is that that's our first discussion about ARPA at the work session, was what I was thinking right now. And then this could be at the 5:30 hearing. Yeah, commissioners know how crowded this calendar is this time of year. And I don't have many other options.
Yeah.
Unless you want to start meeting on like Mondays or Tuesdays or something like that.
Well, I appreciate you laying that out. I think that sticking with June 15th for now is as good a plan as any, and we'll see where that gets us.
Sorry, this is one minor question, and I may just not be reading these maps really well, but there are a lot of things of if it's within 5 miles of another city. Is the map that they've shared with us, does that put it within 5 miles of Baldwin?
It is within 5 miles of Baldwin, Eudora, and Edgerton, I
Okay.
believe. Correct, Jamie?
Yes, I do know within 5 miles of Baldwin City at Edgerton, and I believe possibly Eudora, but I know those two is correct.
Also, there was a minor typo. They had our districts reversed.
Yes.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, well, this is Commissioner Reed. I didn't see a motion laid out, but we just need a motion to set the hearing date, and that is it.
The
right?
date, time, and location.
Date,
would
time,
be
and
great.
location. Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Portillo. I'm happy to move to set a hearing on this potential city of Clearfield for Wednesday, June 15th at 5:30 PM in the County Commission chambers.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, that concludes our regular agenda. We'll move on to appointments. I do have one appointment that I'm ready to make for the CJCC. I'm going to appoint, or I move to appoint Taylor Jones, who I used to work with for a long time at the Willow Domestic Violence Center. She also helps co-facilitate Batters Intervention Program groups, and she has been involved in a variety of court systems, not only in Douglas County, but also down in Franklin County and Jefferson County. So she has some good knowledge and is just a really incredible advocate in our community who will ask great questions and I think be a really important voice on that council.
Taylor is such an incredible community member. I am so excited that she is going to join us on the CJCC. So thank you for talking with her and bringing her to the CJCC.
Cool. Would you like to second my motion?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Commissioner Reed, if you could forward us her contact information, I will get in touch.
Will do. Thank you, Sarah. Any other appointments to discuss?
So last week we discussed Bruce Lease for the Burt Nash Board as an appointment, and I think we all received the resume for Clay Britton, who is seeking reappointment. If it's okay with commissioners, I'd like to move that we appoint Bruce Lease and reappoint Clay Britton to the Burt Nash Board.
I'll second that. Sorry, and the next line is mine. All
Yes.
those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you for bearing with me.
And commissioners, I will share that we have some upcoming planning commission openings, and I have been visiting with a couple of folks within the community who I think would be very good planning commissioners. I'd like to ask if you would be okay. The last time we had some planning commission openings, what we did was we sort of pooled some names, and then I volunteered to meet with each one of those due to my experience on the planning commission. I'd be glad to do that again. We could send names to Sarah maybe, and then I could call people and sort of do that if that was okay with commissioners.
I really appreciate that plan. Thank you for bringing your background and expertise on the Planning Commission to bear on those conversations. So I appreciate it. And we'll send some names to Sarah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Kelly. Any appointments from you, Commissioner Portillo? Anything else to mention on that topic, Sarah? Okay, we'll move on to miscellaneous items. Sarah, would you like to talk about your memo?
Thanks, commissioners. My memo is in the packet without attachments, so we'll make sure we get those to you and then get it updated for the memo. I really want to point out that this is a season of a lot of invitations. So I know many of you, we've noticed that the commissioners will both be attending a couple of different events. So on our website, just community-based events. But please keep those coming to me in case we have more than one commissioner attending. Like tomorrow night is the KU Innovation Park celebration of 500 jobs. I think we might have 2 commissioners there, those kinds of things. In addition to that, we have a work session next week with the Heritage Conservation Council's annual update, and that's the last of my work sessions scheduled for April. At this point, I don't see anything coming in that, and I know there's a couple I'm holding empty because of commission conflicts. So, but I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that we didn't have any work sessions scheduled for the rest of April. And that's all I have, commissioners. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll go ahead and mention just a couple other dates, just in case other commissioners might be there. I will be attending a fundraiser this Friday, April 1st at the Cider Gallery for the Sexual Trauma and Abuse Care Center. And then next Thursday, April 6th. I don't remember which day that is. I think it's Wednesday. Thank you. The Health Champion Lunch that's taking place at the Community Health Center. I plan to attend that in case fellow commissioners will be there. Any other miscellaneous items?
On April 8th, the Chamber's annual dinner is taking place, and I plan to be there. And on April 9th, the Lawrence Art Center fundraiser is taking place, and I plan to be there.
I don't have anything else.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.